Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're doing things a little differently. We're not just summarizing a podcast script. It's actually a pretty long one. It's called Learn English at Home, Your Ultimate Guide. And it's like 4 hours long.
Wow, 4 hours.
Yeah, so we're not going to go through the whole thing, obviously, but we're going to pick out like the most interesting and useful parts. Think of it like a cheat sheet or like a highlight reel.
I like that. A cheat sheet to better English.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you've been learning English for a while. There's going to be something here for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dive right in.
Sounds good to me.
So the first thing that really struck me about this script was that it starts in a kind of unexpected place. It doesn't jump right into grammar or vocabulary.
Oh, really? Where does it start?
Well, it asks you a really simple but profound question. Why are you learning English?
Huh. That's interesting. I guess I never really thought about it. I just know that I need to learn it.
Yeah, and the script really emphasizes how important it is to have a personal goal for learning English. It even gives some examples like wanting to travel or get a better job, or even just for the pure enjoyment of it.
I can see how that would make a big difference. If you know why you're doing something, you're more likely to stick with it, right?
Exactly. It's like when I'm learning something new, I always try to find something that really sparks my interest. If I don't have that intrinsic motivation, it's so much harder to stay focused. What about you? What keeps you motivated when you're learning?
Well, for me, it's all about like expanding my perspective. Each new thing I learn is like a new lens to view the world through.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I love that.
And the script makes this really powerful point. Defining your why isn't just some feel-good exercise. It's actually crucial for staying committed in the long run.
It's like you wouldn't start a road trip without knowing where you're going.
Right.
You need that destination in mind to keep you moving forward.
Exactly. And when you're clear on your destination, those inevitable bumps in the road feel less discouraging.
So true. So we've got our why figured out. What's next?
Well, the script then tackles this big, almost scary idea of fluency.
Yeah, I remember that part. It actually advises against making fluency your sole target, which kind of surprised me at first.
Yeah, fluency can feel so overwhelming. It's like this massive mountain you have to climb all at once. And it can be really discouraging if you don't see yourself reaching the summit anytime soon.
Totally. And that's where the script gets really smart. It suggests breaking down that huge goal of fluency into smaller, more manageable steps.
So instead of saying, I want to be fluent, you might say, this week, I'm going to master ordering coffee in English, or I'm going to learn 20 new vocabulary words about cooking.
I love that because each small win builds your confidence, right? It's like you're leveling up in a video game. Each level you conquer makes you feel more capable of tackling the next one.
You got it. And the script highlights how this approach is actually backed by psychology. There's something called the Zeigarnik effect, which basically means we're more motivated to finish tasks that are already in progress. So by constantly setting and completing these mini goals, you're kind of tapping into this built-in motivation system.
That's fascinating. So we've got our why, and we're setting achievable goals. What's next on this language learning roadmap?
Okay, so speaking of building skills, the script dives into one that we're actually using right now.
Let me guess. Is it vocabulary?
Even more fundamental than that, it's listening.
Oh, right. It's funny how we often overlook how crucial listening is to actually learning a language.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's like the foundation upon which everything else is built. And the script offers a ton of suggestions. Watching movies, listening to podcasts, audiobooks, the list goes on and on.
I remember there was one tip in particular that caught my eye. It was about transcribing.
Oh yeah, transcribing basically means you pick a short audio clip or maybe some song lyrics and try to write down exactly what you hear.
And the script describes it as active listening on steroids, which I find hilarious, but also accurate. It sounds deceptively simple, but that exercise really forces you to become an active listener. You're not just passively taking in sounds. You're training your brain to distinguish individual words to really grasp the rhythm and the intonation of the language.
Yeah, it's a workout for your ears.
Okay, now let's move on to a technique that I think a lot of people might find intimidating, but is incredibly effective. Shadowing. Have you ever tried this?
Oh yeah, shadowing. It's one of my favorites. It's like you're a vocal detective trying to mimic a native speaker as closely as possible.
And you're not just repeating words, you're paying attention to their pronunciation, their tone, even their pauses and breaths.
Exactly. The script compares it to being a smarter parrot, which I love. It captures the essence of shadowing while also highlighting its effectiveness. You're not just mimicking mindlessly, you're analyzing and internalizing the nuances of spoken English.
And that's where the smarter part comes in. By consciously mimicking, you're actually training your mouth muscles to produce those same sounds, those same inflections. It's like giving your tongue a workout at the gym.
I've never thought of it that way, but it makes sense.
So we've talked about setting goals, the importance of listening, and this intriguing technique of shadowing. But what about that elephant in the room? That fear that so many learners face, the fear of actually speaking the language, putting yourself out there and risking making mistakes.
It's such a common fear, and the script tackles it head on. It acknowledges that speaking anxiety is a very real thing, especially when you're worried about making mistakes.
It's like stage fright, but for conversations, right? And the script has a surprisingly simple message about those dreaded mistakes. It encourages learners to see them as opportunities for growth rather than failures.
I love that. It's all about shifting your perspective. Instead of beating yourself up for a grammatical error or mispronounced word, you reframe it as valuable feedback.
And to help learners overcome that mental block, the script offers this really creative exercise. It says, pretend you're a tour guide in your own home.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah, you walk around your house and you describe everything you see in English.
What a fun way to practice. And it's a safe, low-pressure environment, too.
Yeah.
There's no audience to judge you except maybe your cat.
Exactly. It takes the pressure off and allows you to just have fun with the language. It's like turning your house into your own personal language playground.
That's a great way to put it.
So we've covered a lot of ground already. We've talked about finding your why, setting achievable goals, the power of listening, the magic of shadowing, and even how to overcome the fear of speaking. But now it's time to tackle a topic that often causes learners to groan: grammar.
Dun, dun, dun.
But before you reach for the aspirin, I think you'll appreciate how the script approaches it. It reframes grammar as something less intimidating and more like
More like what?
a game.
A game. Okay, I'm intrigued.
It explains that grammar is simply the set of rules that govern how a language works. Once you understand those rules, you can play the language more effectively.
So it's like learning the rules of chess. Sure, you can move the pieces randomly, but if you want to win, you need to understand how they all work together.
Exactly. And to illustrate this point, the script uses the classic subject-verb-object sentence structure. Like the simple sentence, I eat apples.
Ah, yes. The building blocks of English.
Right. It seems basic, but that simple structure is the foundation for building countless sentences in English. It's like learning the alphabet before you can write a novel.
You've got to start somewhere.
Okay, so we've tackled grammar, but what about the other side of language expression writing? How does the script approach that?
Well, speaking of putting those new words and grammar rules to use, the script has a practical and surprisingly enjoyable suggestion. Keep a journal in English.
Now, I know some people might be rolling their eyes at that, thinking, journaling, that's so old school, but hear me out.
Okay, I'm listening.
Journaling isn't just for angsty teenagers. It's a fantastic tool for anyone learning a language. It forces you to think in English, to actively use the vocabulary and grammar you've been learning. And the beauty of journaling is that it's a judgment-free zone.
Ah, so you can make mistakes, experiment, find your own voice.
Precisely. And here's a bonus. As you write, you're bound to encounter words you don't know. This prompts you to look them up and add them to your vocabulary arsenal.
It's like built-in vocabulary expansion. I like that.
Yeah, and the act of writing itself helps cement those new words in your memory. So it's a win-win.
Definitely. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. The importance of defining your why, setting achievable goals, the power of listening, the magic of shadowing, and even those trickier topics of grammar and writing. But before we move on to the next part, I want to hear from you. What stood out to you the most from this part of the script? Was there anything that surprised you or made you think differently about learning English?
I'm curious to hear your thoughts too.
What really struck me is how the script intertwines practical advice with this really encouraging, almost playful tone. It's not just telling you what to do, it's making you feel like you can actually do it and have fun along the way.
I totally agree. It's like the script itself is a cheerleader urging you forward on your language learning journey. And we'll be back soon to continue our deep dive into Learn English at Home. But for now, we'll leave you with that question to ponder. What surprised you? What resonated? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're continuing our exploration of the Learn English at Home podcast script. And this time we're diving into the second half. It's like the unexplored territory.
It is kind of like that. Last time we explored some key strategies for language learning, like setting those really clear goals, not being afraid to make mistakes, and even trying out techniques like shadowing. Did you have a favorite technique from the first part?
I think I have to go with shadowing. It's just so much fun, and it really helps you get a feel for the rhythm of the language.
It's like you become the speaker you're trying to learn from. Yeah. And then we talked about turning your house into a language playground. Remember that one?
Oh yeah, like pretending you're giving a tour of your home in English.
Yeah.
That's a great way to practice speaking without feeling self-conscious.
Exactly. So as we move into this next section of the script, I'm curious to see what other gems we uncover.
Me too. One thing that caught my attention right away was the focus on resources.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's interesting because you might think a script about learning at home would assume people have limited access to resources. But that's not the case at all.
Not at all. The script actually embraces this idea of resourcefulness. Yeah. It reminds us that we're living in this amazing time where we have so many language learning tools right at our fingertips.
And so many of them are free or very affordable.
Exactly. And they're not just limited to those traditional resources like textbooks or language learning software.
So what kind of resources does the script recommend?
Well, it encourages learners to explore everything from language exchange apps to online dictionaries to YouTube channels dedicated to teaching English, and even podcasts made just for language learners.
Podcasts about learning English. That's meta.
It is a bit meta, but hey, it works. And the script even suggests utilizing resources that you might not immediately think of as language learning tools.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, let's say you love cooking. Why not watch cooking shows in English? Or if you're a gamer, try playing a video game with the dialogue and subtitles set to English.
I see what you mean. It's about finding ways to immerse yourself in the language through your hobbies and interests.
Precisely. And it makes the whole learning process so much more enjoyable.
Totally. But it's not just about having access to all these resources. It's also about knowing how to use them effectively, right?
You're right. The script goes beyond just listing resources. It offers specific tips on how to get the most out of them.
Like what kind of tips?
Well, for instance, when using language learning apps, it cautions against just passively clicking through exercises.
So don't just treat it like a game where you're just trying to get to the next level.
Exactly. It encourages learners to really engage with the material, take notes, repeat phrases out loud, and try to use those new words and grammar structures in actual conversations.
So it's about being an active participant in your learning journey, not just a passive consumer of information.
Exactly. It's like anything else in life. You get out what you put in.
So true. Okay, we've talked about resources, but now let's shift gears a bit and address something that I think every language learner struggles with at some point.
Oh, what's that?
Staying motivated. Let's be honest, learning a new language can be challenging. There will be days when you feel frustrated, discouraged, maybe even tempted to give up.
Oh, absolutely. I've been there many times. And the script doesn't sugarcoat this reality. It acknowledges that motivation can ebb and flow.
Yeah.
And it provides some really helpful strategies for dealing with those inevitable slumps.
So it's like a pep talk for language learners.
Kind of. One suggestion that stood out to me was this idea of creating a language learning routine. It's about establishing a consistent time and place for studying, even if it's just for 15 minutes each day.
It's like making an appointment with yourself to learn.
Exactly. And the power of routine shouldn't be underestimated. When something becomes a habit, it requires less willpower and becomes more ingrained in your daily life.
I like that, creating a habit loop for language learning, so you're not relying on motivation alone.
Right. And speaking of support systems, the script also highlights the importance of finding a language learning community.
Oh, that's a good one. So it could be an online forum, a local language exchange group, or even just a friend who's also learning English.
Any of the above. Sharing your struggles and triumphs with people who understand what you're going through can make a huge difference.
Yeah, it's like you're all in this together.
Exactly. And it helps to know that you're not alone in this journey.
Now, on a slightly different note, the script has this really interesting section where it talks about dealing with criticism.
Oh, right. Criticism from others about our language learning? Yeah, that can be tough.
It can be really disheartening, especially when it comes from people whose opinions you value.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're putting yourself out there, you're trying your best, and then someone comes along and rains on your parade.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to extinguish your language learning fire.
And the script acknowledges how tough that can be.
Yeah.
And it offers some advice on how to deal with it.
So it's a secret.
Well, it encourages learners to surround themselves with positivity, to seek out those supportive communities, and to remember that ultimately, this is your journey.
Yeah, you're doing this for you, not for anyone else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you get to decide how you want to approach it and who you want to share it with.
Now, as we delve deeper into the second half of the script, I'm noticing a subtle shift in focus.
Oh, really?
What do you mean? Well, it seems like we're moving away from specific techniques and resources and more towards this broader idea of mindset. It's almost like the script is saying, okay, you've got the tools. Now here's how to use them effectively.
That's a great observation. And the script provides some really insightful guidance on cultivating a growth mindset, which is essentially the belief that your abilities can be developed through hard work and dedication.
So it's about believing in yourself and your ability to learn.
Yes, and it's about embracing the challenges, seeing mistakes as opportunities for learning, and constantly striving to improve.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about progress.
Exactly. The script reminds us that fluency isn't something you achieve overnight. It's a journey that unfolds over time with consistent effort and a willingness to learn from those setbacks.
And it's about enjoying the process, right? Savoring those small victories, those aha moments, and the thrill of connecting with a new language and culture.
Absolutely. Now, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, we want to leave you with something to ponder. What are some of your go-to resources for learning English? What strategies help you stay motivated when the going gets tough? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Wow, it's hard to believe we're already at the final part of our deep dive into this Learn English at Home script. It feels like we just started.
I know, right? Time flies when you're having fun learning English.
And we have covered so much ground, haven't we? From the importance of defining your why and setting those achievable goals to embracing mistakes and exploring all those fantastic resources.
And remember those techniques. We talked about shadowing and turning your house into a language playground.
It's been quite a journey, but I feel like this last part of the script really brings everything together. It takes it to a whole new level.
You're right. It goes beyond just the mechanics of language learning and really delves into the transformative power of learning English. It's pretty inspiring, actually.
Yeah, it emphasizes that learning English isn't just about acquiring knowledge. It's about personal growth and expansion.
It's like learning a new language can change the way you think, the way you see the world, even the way you interact with others. It's pretty amazing.
You know, it's funny because I never really thought about it that way before. But the script really opened my eyes to the idea that language learning is about so much more than just memorizing words and grammar rules.
It's about pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, embracing new experiences, connecting with people from different cultures in a more meaningful way.
And the script highlights how learning English can open so many doors to new opportunities, right? Whether it's in your career, your personal life, or even just in terms of having access to more information and entertainment.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
It's like you're opening up a whole new world for yourself.
One thing that really resonated with me in this final section was the emphasis on celebrating your progress.
Yeah.
You know, taking the time to acknowledge how far you've come and all the accomplishments you've made along the way.
Oh yeah, that's so important. It's easy to get caught up in that not yet fluent mindset where you're always focusing on what you haven't mastered yet instead of what you have.
Yeah, you're so focused on the destination that you forget to enjoy the journey.
Exactly. And the script encourages us to shift that perspective, to appreciate all those small wins along the way.
So did you finally master that tricky grammar rule? Did you have a conversation with a native speaker and actually understand what they were saying? Celebrate it.
Those are victories. And acknowledging those victories helps to keep you motivated and fuels that desire to keep learning and growing.
So we've talked about a lot of different aspects of learning English in this deep dive, but I think the script ultimately boils down to one simple but powerful message.
What's that?
Learning English is a gift. You're giving yourself a gift that will enrich your life in countless ways.
I love that. It's a gift that keeps on giving, expanding your horizons, enriching your experiences, connecting you with a global community.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Learn English at Home, we want to leave you with this one final thought. What is one small step you can take today to move closer to your English learning goals?
It doesn't have to be anything big or dramatic. It could be as simple as reviewing a few vocabulary words or listening to a podcast episode in English, or even just writing a sentence or two in your journal.
The important thing is to just keep moving forward, one step at a time.
And remember, the most important ingredient in this whole language learning journey is to enjoy the process. Embrace the challenges, celebrate the victories, and never stop exploring the beautiful and ever-evolving world of English.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive as much as we did, and we wish you all the best on your language learning adventure. Happy learning.